And good evening. My name is John Henry, and I'm an alcoholic. In this Code Blue Big Book Action and Study seminar, we're going to go through the first 164 pages of the Big Book, the recovery section, and we're going to do the work that the first 100 people who recovered said we have to do to overcome this hopeless condition of mind and body. I borrow heavily from the Golden Slippers, from Joe and Charlie, from Clancy, and from all of the giants who have gone before me. Now, I don't claim to be any big book guru or any kind of top 10 spiritualist. I'm just a simple drunk. I was almost dead from the disease. When I finally became willing to do the action in our book, I was able to recover and have a pretty good life. So I'm hoping that there's 2s and 3s and 4s of you listening to this together. You're going to need a big book. I like the large print big book, highlighter and pen. I'm going to try to get some of the paperwork that I've got online. And please bring your willingness. Please bring your willingness and your open mind. And as you're going to see, we open every session with the set-aside prayer so that we may be more open to receiving this information. Thanks for listening. Good evening. I'm John. I'm an alcoholic. During the 1950s, a man by the name of Max C., now deceased, started a group in Winnipeg, Manitoba called the Golden Slippers. The group was a back to the basics of the big book kind of group, especially for those people who could not stay sober for any length of time. The group took a bunch of chronic slippers and walked them through the steps, taking the action exactly as laid out by the first 100 men and women who wrote the basic textbook Alcoholics Anonymous. This is not your typical thanks for sharing kind of AA meeting, nor is it like any seminar. Participants are asked to do all 12 steps as laid out in our basic textbook. One or more of the people who have done this work before will be guides to lead you through the instructions in our basic textbook using a dictionary published at about the same time as the book Alcoholics Anonymous to help us better understand the directions as they were written by the first 100 men and women. We ask every participant to commit to the entire process. Though we read and study the AA Big Book, this group is not limited to members of AA. We who have participated in these groups before have come to understand that these sessions make us much better sponsors. We can now lead people through the steps exactly as given to us by those who have gone before, unfettered and unchanged. In addition to being a boot camp for sponsors, we also feel this is especially valuable to those who have been through some sort of treatment or rehab and have been in effect left off at step 3 or step 5. Recovery requires that we do all 12 steps. We recover in AA by taking the steps, and if we don't take the action as described in our basic textbook, we may not recover. I would use stronger language than that. Many of us may die. These study and action sessions will guide you through the steps precisely as the first 100 men and women laid them down. These are back to the basic sessions, accepting the simple kit of spiritual tools that's been laid at our feet. We start out every session with the set-aside prayer, if you're able to get on a knee. New people that are here for the first time, it is one of those sheets that you have, and we do write it in our book. So, set-aside prayer. God, please let me set aside everything I think I know about sobriety, life, and you, so that I may be open to a new experience. Amen. All right, welcome everybody. And if it does get hot in here, we can open these windows because it's that time of year again, so getting colder. Guys, we ran out of time last week, so I didn't have a chance to go over the paperwork that I handed out. So I'm just really quickly, it's pretty self-explanatory, some of them. This is the syllabus. It basically just tells us what we're going to cover. Right? So last week was the preface and the forewords. If you weren't here, see if you can find somebody to help you get caught up. We do a lot of highlighting and writing in our book, so that's just basically what we're going to do. This sheet is our dictionary, right? Because this book was started in 37 and finished in 39, and some words over time, they change their meaning. Right, so these are the words that some people thought have changed meaning enough that we should look at them so we can grasp the exact meaning of what they meant when they were writing the book Alcoholics Anonymous. The big book goals we kind of covered last week. This just tells us, the foreword. What we did last week was a brief history. And then goal 1, we're going to see what the problem is, right? So today, that's going to be the doctor's opinion, and then it's also going to be chapter 1, Bill's story. Goal 2, the solution, which is going to be chapters 2, 3, and 4, right? And then goal 3, action necessary for recovery. So that's going to be chapter 5, 6, and 7, how it works into action and working with others. So step 1, we're powerless over alcohol. We're going to talk about that today. We're going to find out exactly what's wrong with us today, right? Step 2, we find out what that power is, right? So that we can get our lives back. And then the rest of it is the practical program of action that we can implement to get that power. So in Bill's writing, all through the book, Alcoholics Anonymous, Bill is going to tell us over and over again what the problem is, what the solution is, and what the practical program of action to enact that solution is, right? So that's kind of how the book is laid out. I think I had one more thing. Yes, road chart to decision. You know, this for years, I'm a veteran of like 8 or 9 treatments, and you know, and I've been in and out of these rooms. I was in and out of these rooms for 20 years, hoping that what you guys had would rub off on me if I went to enough meetings, but it never did. I would get so bad that I would end up in treatment, and then I would come to these meetings, and I had step 1 down. I was hopeless, I was miserable, I was desperate, I was dying, I just got fired again, I just got out of jail. So I had step 1 over and over again, and I came in and I saw you guys, and I said, by God, if it works for these other people, it can work for me, right? So I wanted what you have, and so that was the solution. And many, many times I came into these rooms and said, I got step 2, right? And then step 3, right, the decision, the turning point, many, many times, hundreds of times I said, I'm going to make a decision to get better, right? So I did steps 1, 2, and 3, right? But unfortunately, after step 3, we either go one direction, we believe and we accept spiritual help, that's asking somebody to sponsor us, to take us through the book and have us start on step 4 and then progress through the steps, or we can just keep going to meeting after meeting after meeting, but we don't do anything, and eventually we're going to see today in the doctor's opinion that we are going to, for sure, every time go the other direction, which is death or insanity, right? Or, you know, maybe you'll get in prison again, you know, and that's for years. For my first treatment, I was 25 years old. I think it was in 1989 and or 88, and I just time after time I would do steps 1, 2, 3. They call it the 1, 2, 3 shuffle, but I would never go the other direction to believe and accept spiritual help. So I always ended up going back and using and almost dying till I got so bad that I go to treatment again, and then I'd show up in these rooms and I'd do step 1, 2, 3, and I'd start feeling good enough where, you know, I got this thing, but I would never go the other direction until about 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I was so miserable and so desperate that I snuck into one of these code blues at 6 months sober. At 6 months sober, I was going completely insane. I was restless, irritable, discontent, and I was planning on drinking myself to death, and I snuck into one of these code blues, and I actually followed along, and I did everything they said, and I went through and I did my 4th step. They assigned me a sponsor, and I did my 5th step, and lo and behold, all of a sudden I got better. The obsession which had been ruling my life, telling me that I had to take a drink, tricking me into drinking over and over again, was removed, right? But in addition to that, I learned how to be happily and usefully whole. I had some peace of mind and some serenity so that I did not have to go back to drinking to feel that ease and comfort. I got that ease and comfort through the working of the steps and the helping of other people. So it's real important, and that's what we're going to do in Code Blue, right? We're going to believe, we're going to go through, we're going to believe, and we're going to accept spiritual help, and we're going to do these steps. And I guarantee you guys, if you show up to every session and if you do all of the work, your life will change. That is a promise from me. You know, if you come to most sessions and you don't do the work, you know, you might get a little bit better, but you're not going to get the full deal. So I'm asking everybody to come to every session and to do the work. Now, if life gets in the way and you can't, that's okay. Grab somebody and get caught up on the week that you missed. But if we want to get better, we got to do the work. Somebody a long time ago said the program of Alcoholics Anonymous Anonymous is not for the people that need it, right? And it is not for the people who want it. The program of Alcoholics Anonymous is for the people who do it. If you do it, you're going to get it, and if you don't do the work, you're not going to get it. It's as simple as that. And that had me baffled for 20 years, and I thought there was something wrong with me because I saw other people getting sober, and I didn't understand. Nobody grabbed me and said, "You got to do this or you're going to die," until 5 years ago when the fellas grabbed me and told me that, and my life changed. So that's the paperwork that we had for last week. And again, it's important when we go through this that we understand that Bill, again, he's going to tell us the problem, he's going to tell us the solution, and then he's going to give us the practical program of action to enact that solution. So I got to think that we are probably the luckiest alcoholics ever, because prior to the 1930s, we did not have any kind of solution that would save our lives. We simply did not. And I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna read something. This is a Chinese proverb, because alcoholism has been around for years. But the only option we had was to drink ourselves to death. Maybe die a few years early, or maybe die a lot of years early, or maybe end up in prison. So here's a 4,000-year-old Chinese proverb. A man takes a drink, the drink takes a drink, the drink takes the man. Right? Now that's 4,000 years old. That's exactly what happens to us alcoholics. That's what happens to us. Now, I've got another thing that I just love. This was written by Solomon. Right? Solomon, so this is out of Proverbs in the Bible. And I'm guessing that this might be 3,500 years old, but to be honest with you, I'm not entirely certain how old it is. But I imagine that somebody might have asked Solomon. They say, "Well, what's the deal with these alcoholics, or whatever they called them back then? They do this to themselves over and over again. What's going on with these guys?" And here's what Solomon said: "Who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has wounds without cause? Who has redness of eyes? They that tarry long at the wine." Right? I mean, I remember I'd get home and I'd have bruises all over. I wouldn't know where the hell I got them. "You will be as one who stoopeth in the midst of the sea, or that sleepeth at the top of a tall mast." Remember when you were drinking and you lie down and the world starts twirling around, or you get up off of that bar stool and you can't even walk straight, you're staggering back and forth and you fall down? "You will say, they have beaten me and I felt it not." Right? Those wounds I used to wake up with. "And thine eyes shall behold strange women." Right? I did a lot of that. "And thine heart shall utter perverse things. They will arise in the morning and seek it yet again." Almost a perfect description of an alcoholic. So we've been doing this to ourselves for thousands of years, and we've never had an answer. Basically, everybody throughout history, what did they say? They said, "Hey man, you don't got any willpower. What's the matter with you? You've got low moral character," right? Or they might just say, "You're sinful. You're a sinful character," right? What you're doing, running around and drinking and womanizing, you're sinful, right? And they would say, "John, pull yourself together. What's the matter with you? Why can't you stop?" Right? So I didn't understand. I thought there was something wrong with me. What the hell is wrong with me? Why can't I stop drinking? Right? So again, we've got, finally, thank God, we've got a solution in this book. So now remember, last week we talked a little bit about when the fellas got together, there were 40 people staying sober, right? So Bill Wilson, Dr. Bob Smith, Bill Dotson, the third guy, and the first 40 people, they sobered up and they decided to write the book, right? Now, Dr. Silkworth, we talked about him last week, and Dr. Silkworth was the guy at the Towns Hospital who treated over 50,000 alcoholics, right? He's the one that told Bill Wilson about the disease concept of alcoholism, the allergy of the body and the obsession of the mind. So they asked Dr. Silkworth, they said, "Can we use your ideas of the allergy of the body and the obsession of the mind in our book?" right? And will you write some of it? And Dr. Silkworth said, yes, you can use my ideas, and yes, I'll write it. But don't use my name. He was adamant that they could not use his name, and they had to call it the doctor's opinion. He said, I cannot prove what I've told you people and what I've written, and if you put my name on it, they're going to drum me out of the medical profession, and I won't be able to make a living. Right? Now, by the time the second edition of Alcoholics Anonymous came out in 55, 56, by that time the American Psychiatric Association had said alcoholism is an illness. Right? So as soon as that happened, Dr. Silkworth or his descendants, they said, okay, go ahead and put his name in the book now, right? Because now everybody's caught up to his ideas. So you're going to see Dr. Silkworth in the second, third, and fourth editions, but you will not see in the first edition, in the doctor's opinion, it says, where is it here? Doesn't say anything. Very truly, doctor's opinion. There's nothing there. So, all right. So let's see here. Let's go to the book. We're going to start looking at the doctor's opinion today. Okay, guys, so we are on page XXV, Roman numeral 25. So we're going to write something at the top of the page, right? Let's write, this book was written by the first 100, right? Or just book written by first 100, something in shorthand, right? And those are the first 100 people that recovered from this disease. So it's important that we understand that this book was not written by a single person, right? Bill had been sober longer than anybody, and they said, Bill, you write the chapters, then you submit them to the New York group and the Akron group. We're going to read them. We're going to recommend changes, and when we all agree, you can put it down in the book. And by the time they finished up the book, there were 100 people who were remaining sober, absolutely unheard of. So, book written by 100 people. So, I always, being a smart alcoholic that I am, I always want to argue with everything. And when I'm arguing with this book, I'm arguing with 100 people. I'm not arguing with one. Right? So that's a good thing to keep in mind. And then let's write something else. We are in a fellowship. We are in a fellowship. That's the meetings, the coffee, the cookies, the going to Perkins, maybe getting together for a bike ride. We are in a fellowship. We work a program of recovery. And we're going to see that those are two different things, right? I think that we need them both. I certainly need both of those to remain sober. We are in a fellowship. We work a program of recovery. If we can combine both of these elements, we can overcome this disease, and we can have a pretty doggone good life, right? So we are in a fellowship. We work a program of recovery. So, the doctor's opinion. We. So again, let's circle that word we, right? And I said this last week. We can do what I can't do. So just circle that big we. I mean, for about my last 10 years of using, it was me, myself, and I. I was all alone. I was miserable. I was hopeless. I was desperate. I was contemplating suicide. I knew a couple of drug dealers and some people at the liquor store, but that was about it. We of Alcoholics Anonymous believe that the reader will be interested in the medical estimate of the plan of recovery described in this book. Underline plan of recovery, and if I say underline or highlight, it's the same thing. I've got that basket of highlighters and pens there if anybody needs them. And let's, above it or below it, write the 12 steps. That's the plan of recovery in the book. It's the 12 steps, right? And remember, last week, guys, when we read the foreword to the third edition, we underlined the 12 steps that summarize the program, right? So the steps on the wall are just a summary of the program, and the instructions for working the steps are in the first 164 pages, right? So one of my sponsors, he often said, if you work the steps off the wall, you get an off-the-wall program. He said the instructions are in the book, and you got to do them by the book. Convincing testimony must surely come from medical men who have had experience with the suffering of our members and have witnessed our return to health. A well-known doctor, chief physician at a nationally prominent hospital specializing in alcoholic and drug addiction, gave Alcoholics Anonymous this letter. So again, off to the right, we're going to write Dr. William D. Silkworth. Dr. William D. Silkworth, I think Duncan was his middle name, and the hospital was the Towns Hospital. And there's all kinds of stuff, there's all kinds of history books now, and you can get online and look up all kinds of history and read about these guys. Dr. William D. Silkworth, and it was the Towns Hospital, gave Alcoholics Anonymous this letter. So, to whom it may concern, and you can write 1939 right there, 1939. He wrote this for us. I have specialized in the treatment of alcoholism for many years. In late 1934, I attended a patient. Above patient, write Bill Wilson. Right? Just write his name, Bill Wilson, and he's the New York stock speculator, like to call himself a stockbroker, and he is the primary author of the book. In late 1934, I attended a patient, Bill Wilson, who, though he had been a competent businessman of good earning capacity, was an alcoholic of a type I had come to regard as hopeless. Underline or highlight hopeless. And in that little margin, let's write beyond human aid. Beyond human aid. So even Dr. Silkworth, because Dr. Silkworth, basically what happened is he saw all these people coming in to the Towns Hospital, and they were sick and almost dead, and he would treat these people over a matter of months, and they would leave the hospital. And he saw something very interesting. He saw that many of the people that he treated and brought back to health, he would never see them again. They would leave and they would never come back. But he saw a certain percentage of those people that he nursed them back to health, and not more than a month later or 6 months later or a year later, these same people would come back into the hospital in worse condition than they had come in the first time. And he saw these people come in over and over again. And that's where he started to get these ideas that some of us were different, right? What's up with these guys, he's thinking, right? So, in the course of his third treatment, underline third, right? Underline that. Because, one of our founders, he was detoxed 3 times. I went through 9 treatments, right? So, if you've been through more than one treatment, and you've had thoughts of maybe suicide or things of that nature, you are not alone. I mean, that's many of us, right? So, in the course of his third treatment, he acquired certain ideas concerning a possible means of recovery. Let's highlight the next 3 lines. As part of his rehabilitation, he commenced to present his conceptions to other alcoholics, impressing upon them that they must do likewise with still others. And we're going to circle that must, right? A lot of people say there are no musts in the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's absolutely true. To be a member of the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, all you got to do is say, I'm a member. Right? That's all you got to do. But if you want to work the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, there are a lot of musts that we're going to have to do, right? And that's one of the first ones. So next to what we just highlighted, off to the left, let's write passing it on. Passing it on. And then off to the right, and I'll be honest, I've never counted them, but with my first code blue, they told me that there was 111 musts or actions. So write 111 musts or actions that are in the first 164 pages. And they might be requirement or words of that nature, but I guess there's 111 is what they've told me. This has become the basis of a rapidly growing fellowship of these men and their families. This man and over 100 others appear to have recovered. Let's circle that word recovered again. Right? There's that word. right? I mean, that's a little bit of a controversy. My sponsor in this book tells me I can recover from this disease because I came in here, I was miserable, I was desperate, I was hopeless, I was suicidal, I was physically ill, and you know what? I worked these steps and I no longer am that way. I indeed have recovered from this disease. Now, like we said last week, though, we're never cured. There are certain things that we have to do on a daily basis to remain recovered, to keep this disease arrested. I personally know scores, that's 20s if you remember from the Gettysburg Address, I personally know scores of cases who were of the type with whom other methods failed completely. Right? Now, you don't need to write this, but when Bill Wilson worked with Dr. Bob Smith, he discovered really quickly two very important things. The importance of identification. Sharing our stories with another alcoholic was very important so that the guy that you're talking to can understand that he's not unique, or the woman. And he also understood that strenuous work, one alcoholic with another, both of these things were vital to permanent recovery. I personally know scores of cases who were of the type with whom other methods had failed completely. These facts appear to be of extreme medical importance because of the extraordinary possibilities of rapid growth inherent in this group. They may mark a new epoch in the annals of alcoholism. These men may well have a remedy for thousands of such situations. I mean, it's actually today millions. I mean, how prophetic. You may rely absolutely on anything they say about themselves. After themselves, let's write rigorous honesty. Rigorous honesty. Very truly yours, there he is, William D. Silkworth, M.D. And again, in the first edition, there was nothing there because he couldn't prove it. And for some reason, and I have not been able to figure out why, but in the first edition, the doctor's opinion was on page 1, and they moved it to the Roman numerals for some reason. And this is it was vital to my recovery to grasp what was wrong with me. So I don't know why they did that, but when you are out there working with somebody else, you start at the forewords and you go through this doctor opinion just like we're doing here, because they've got to get this the idea of the allergy and the obsession that we're going to cover today. We've got to get it hammered into everybody's head. The physician who, at our request, gave us this letter has been kind enough to enlarge his views in another statement which follows. In this statement, he confirms what we who have suffered alcoholic torture must, circle that must believe, and then highlight that little phrase, that the body of the alcoholic is quite as abnormal as his mind. So next to that, what we just highlighted off to the left, we're going to write physical and psychological. It's physical and psychological, and above it you can write twofold disease. Twofold. And I've been told too that this is the first time in history that somebody said that there's something wrong with the body of the alcoholic as well as the mind, right? So twofold disease, physical and psychological. For years it was just, like I said, it was sinful, low moral character, no willpower, can't pull himself together. That's what it was for years, but now all of a sudden somebody's saying, hey, there's something wrong with the body. And I guess I forgot to mention, but there was a fellow named Dr. Trotter in England 300 years ago who wrote a paper on alcoholism. He thought it was a disease, but he couldn't describe it. He didn't know what it was. He didn't have a cure. There was another guy named Dr. Benjamin Rush. He's a signer of the Declaration of Independence. He said that alcoholism is a disease, but again, he couldn't describe it, and he didn't have an answer for it either. So people have been trying to figure us out for a long time, and they were unable to until Dr. Silkworth came along. It did not satisfy us to be told that we could not control our drinking just because we were maladjusted to life, that we were in full flight from reality. Underline full flight from reality. And next to that, write denial. Denial. I think I was maybe in my third, fourth, or maybe my fifth treatment. I just thought all I had to do was go in and get weaned off the booze. But by the fourth or fifth treatment, I began to think maybe there was something wrong with me, right? So I was starting to crack through that denial. or were outright mental defectives. These things were true to some extent, in fact to a considerable extent with some of us. But we are sure that our bodies were sickened as well. In our belief, any picture of the alcoholic which leaves out this physical factor is incomplete. The doctor's theory that we have an allergy, circle that word, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. The doctor's theory that we have an allergy to alcohol interests us. As laymen, our opinion as to its soundness may, of course, mean little. But as ex-problem drinkers, we can say that his explanation makes good sense. It explains many things for which we cannot otherwise account. Though we work out our solution on the spiritual as well as an altruistic plane. So altruistic means we're going to go out there and help other people with no idea for monetary gain, right? We're gonna go out there. We don't want any money. We just want to be helpful, and we're also helping ourselves when we go out and work with other alcoholics because we get to stay sober and we get to help others. Altruistic plane. We favor hospitalization. Underline hospitalization. And next to it, write detox. They've got detox today. We favor hospitalization for the alcoholic who is very jittery or befogged. Now, their stories, back in the day when these guys were going out and 12-stepping people going through the DTs, they'd, 2 or 3 of these alcoholic members, they would go out and they would wean people off of the alcohol. They would sit on people's chests when they were flopping up and down going through the DTs. They would do all kinds of things to help people. Today, you know what? Today we've got detox centers, and you're going to be doing somebody the utmost favor if you get them into a detox center. We're not going to try to do that stuff ourselves. We're going to get these people, and you know what? We might even call an ambulance if we have to get them to the detox center. And a lot of times the ambulance drivers, they might say, "Gal, another alcoholic, doggone it." But you know what? Tough bounce. We're going to get an ambulance, and we're going to get these people to detox if we think it's warranted. Who is still very jittery or befogged. More often than not, it is imperative that a man's brain be cleared before he is approached, as he then has a better chance of understanding and accepting of what we have to offer. Now, I'm going to attest to that because I have tried to 12-step people who were drunk, and I have had no success doing that. I simply haven't. But if you can get the person even the very next day when they're at their lowest, or sometime in the following week, that I have found is a really good time to approach people and try to 12-step them. When we read Bill's story, we're going to see that he was 12-step when he was drunk, but I would venture to say that that's an exception to the rule. So typically we want to get them after they've been removed from alcohol. The doctor writes, "The subject presented in this book seems to me to be of paramount just simply means the most important, right? Most important, paramount importance to those afflicted with alcoholic addiction. I say this after many years' experience as medical director of one of the oldest hospitals in the country treating alcoholic and drug addiction." And again, that's the town's hospital, right? "There was, therefore, a sense of real satisfaction when I was asked to contribute a few words on a subject which is covered in such masterly detail in these pages. We doctors have realized for a long time that some form of moral psychology," let's circle moral psychology, and really, all that means is values or ethics. That's all that really means. Some form of moral psychology, values or ethics. And I guess one definition is an intersection of ethics, psychology, and philosophy of the mind. But simply put, it's good morals or good values. Was of urgent importance to alcoholics, but its application presented difficulties beyond our conception. So circle or underline beyond our conception. And next to that, we're going to write spiritual solution. Spiritual solution. So these doctors, and Dr. Silkworth included, started to see these people recover, and he could not quantify it scientifically. He had no idea, what the heck is going on with these guys. This was beyond their training, and it was beyond their conception. And that's our spiritual solution. That's what we get when we work the steps. What with our ultra-modern standards, our scientific approach to everything, we are perhaps not well equipped to apply the powers of good that lie outside our synthetic knowledge. Right? They don't know. Many years ago, one of the leading contributors, above leading contributors, just write Bill W., to this book, came under our care in this hospital, and while here, he acquired some ideas. Circle some ideas, and you can draw a little arrow off to the left, and you can write starting of steps. Starting of steps. He acquired some ideas, and if I'm going too fast, tell me to slow down. I had a crazy day at work and had a lot of coffee in me. I drink one of these coffees a week, and it's right before I come here. So, which he put into practical application at once. Plus, it's got an extra shot in there too, of caffeine, that is. So, let's circle at once. Application at once. Circle at once, and in that little margin there, if you're in the 4th edition anyway, write 3 days sober. Bill W. started 12-stepping. 3 days sober. Bill W. started 12-stepping. That's awesome. I mean, don't let anybody tell you, hey, you got to have 6 months or a year before you can go out and help anybody. My sponsor, and I don't know what's right or wrong, to be honest with you, but my sponsor said, as soon as you've made one, if you're working the steps, and as soon as you've made one amend in step 9, he said, you're good to go. You raise your hand and you start going out and helping other people. But there's no law that says we can't go out and share our story with other people and bring other people to meetings and start helping people right away, just like Bill did. And remember, when he went out to Akron with Dr. Bob, after 10 days, they went out to the hospital and met AA number 3, Bill Dotson. Later, he requested the privilege. Underline that word privilege. Right? So, it is. I mean, for me, it's a privilege to be able to do this Code Blue study, and I think it's a privilege when hospitals and prisons let us take meetings there. That's an absolute privilege that they give us. He requested the privilege of being allowed to tell his story to other patients here, and with some misgivings, underline some misgivings, right? And just right next to that, you can write the word crackpot. Right? Because you know what? A few days earlier, Bill Wilson was an alcoholic crackpot in that hospital, and now all of a sudden, after a couple of days, they're letting this guy go and minister to some other hopeless people. And one of the reasons they were letting him do this is because the people that they let him approach, the doctors knew that they were hopeless and they were beyond scientific help. So it's like, what the hell? Let the crackpot go talk to him. Look what's happened to him in the last couple of days. And so they let Bill do that. With some misgivings, we consented. The cases we have followed through have been most interesting. In fact, many of them are amazing. The unselfishness, underline that word unselfishness. I don't know, people say this is a selfish program. I don't know what that means, because the people that helped me and reached out were the most unselfish people I've ever met in my life. Coming over, picking me up, and then spending all that time with me. The unselfishness of these men, as we have come to know them, the entire absence of profit motive, and their community spirit is indeed inspiring to one who has labored long and wearily in this alcoholic field. They believe in themselves, and still more in the power, circle power, and highlight to the end of the paragraph, just those 2 little lines. And still more in the power which pulls chronic alcoholics back from the gates of death. And I got to tell you guys, if I wasn't going to die from the booze and the drugs, I was going to die by my own hand. And I am pulled back, and I've seen other people pulled back from the gates of death. But I've also seen people die. I've seen a lot of people die in the last 5 years that I've been in these rooms. I might talk about that a little bit later. Now, you see that power is capitalized. At the bottom, let's write 30 synonyms for God in the book. Anytime Bill capitalizes a letter, he's using it as a synonym for God. So again, I never counted them, but I took it on faith. 30 synonyms for God in the book, or at least in the recovery section that we're going to cover in Code Blue, which pulls chronic alcoholics back from the gates of death. You know, I got to tell you, one guy, man, I feel so bad. The doctor, I think he got in another bar fight or something, and the judge said, you're going to come in and you're going to pee in this cup, I don't know, every other day or every night or whatever. And he says, if you're drinking again, you're going to go to the slammer. Well, this fella, he knew that he couldn't do it. He left for work one morning and he had 2 beautiful children and a wife, and he went out to his garage and he hung himself. He could not face life without alcohol, and he knew that he probably wouldn't make it, and that was his solution. And I understand, because that's where I was too. Another person crashed the car, took out somebody else. Another guy was dead on his apartment floor with liver failure. It just goes on. Of course, an alcoholic ought to be freed from his underline physical craving for liquor. Underline that, and again, write detox. Write allergy/detox. And again, at the top of the page, let's write obsession of mind and allergy of body. Obsession of mind and allergy of body. And these are going to be little words that are going to trigger in your memory things that then you're going to be able to talk to your sponsees when you're out helping them. Because the whole idea of Code Blue is that you guys are going to go out of here in 3.5 months, and you're going to be out there after having worked these steps, and you're going to be taking other people through this book and helping others. Because that every time we do that, we rework the steps ourselves, and our life keeps getting better and better and better. Craving for liquor, and this often requires a definite hospital procedure before psychological measures can be of maximum benefit. So again, we want to get everybody off the sauce before we start working with them. We got to get the cobwebs out of the head a little bit. We believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy. Again, circle the word allergy, and then highlight the next 2 lines. That the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. You can stop highlighting there, and then off to the left we're going to write physical allergy can't be controlled. Physical allergy can't be controlled. Now, you know what? Some of us, it's like Russian roulette. We go to the bar. I'm only going to have 2 or 3 drinks. Maybe on one particular night we're able to have 2 or 3 drinks and stop. That's entirely possible. That never happened to me, but many other alcoholics told me that. But it's Russian roulette, because you know what? The next night you have the 2 or 3 drinks, and the allergy kicks in, the craving, and you cannot control how much you take, and you end up drinking all night, blacked out, and all kinds of trouble. So that is the phenomenon of craving. And Dr. Silkworth called it a phenomenon because he didn't understand it. He didn't understand it. But he said it's limited to this class, the ones like Bill Wilson, those guys that kept coming back over and over, and it never occurs in the average temperate drinker. These allergic types can never circle that word, never safely use alcohol in any form at all. And once having formed the habit and found they cannot break it, once having lost their self-confidence, their reliance upon things human, their problems pile up on them and become astonishingly difficult to solve. Next to what we just read, write step 1, powerless. Step 1, powerless. All right, so everybody, we're going to grab our little sheet. Does everybody have the disease concept? Let's pass these out. Now, I want to let everybody know that this is not AA approved material. Everybody, you guys got it? Okay, this is not AA approved material because why we have the allergy or whatever, that might cause controversy. And Alcoholics Anonymous stays out of all controversies, right? So, but this, and I'm borrowing this from Joe and Charlie, I think that this has such depth and weight that we've got to look at it. So, let's get my notes here. Okay, so the word allergy, right? I'm going to read a little bit of stuff first here. Oh, no, I won't. I'll do this. Okay, so look at the top of the page, on the top in the middle where it says 9. You see one drink. Go over to the right-hand side. One drink. You follow the arrows up, and it says 9 drink safely. They are at ease, right? So what that means is the normal, average, temperate drinker can take a drink of alcohol, and they have enzymes of sufficient quantity and quality in their body that they can process that alcohol, right? So the first thing that happens is it turns it into, I'm going to try to pronounce this, acetaldehyde. Then it turns it into diacetic acid. Then it turns it into acetone, right? And then it turns into water, sugar, carbon dioxide, and it's dissipated through the urinary intestinal tract and carbon dioxide through the lungs. So the average temperate drinker can have, is like, 1 drink an hour, they can't get drunk, right? So they take it and it goes out of their body, right? Now, on the other side are the 10% of us that do not drink safely, right? We have enzymes of insufficient quantity and quality, right? So we break it down into the acetaldehyde, then into the diacetic acid, and then it turns into acetone, but we don't have the enzymes to get rid of that acetone. And it is proven today, it is proven scientifically, that when we have acetone in the bloodstream, this creates an actual physical craving for alcohol. Physical craving. So we can't break that down, man. And 1 drink sets off the craving from acetone. Then 2 drinks, we still have the acetone from the first, the acetone from the second. We have 3 drinks, 4 drinks, and the acetone keeps building up and building up, and the craving keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. But I'm going to talk about this word allergy because the word allergy is confusing to me, right? Because, how can I be allergic to something when I'm doffing a quart a day? I'm drinking a quart of whiskey a day. How in the devil can I be allergic to it, right? So the word allergy is usually a physical manifestation brought on by a food, beverage, or substance, right? So again, how can I be allergic to alcohol when I can drink a quart a day? I don't have any rash. No watery eyes or runny nose, no dysentery. Well, let's go to the dictionary. One definition of an allergy is an abnormal reaction to something. An abnormal reaction. So we got to ask ourselves when it comes to alcohol, what's normal and what's not. And you don't need to write any of this down or do anything. Don't worry, just listen. What's normal and what isn't normal? And I didn't understand that. When I would go to a football game, I'd go to see the Vikings or whatnot. I would always be drunk, and I always assumed everybody else was drunk too. I didn't know what was normal. I thought everybody drank like me. But that's not true. The social temperate drinker, they come home from work, they're tired, they're tense, they're wrought up from the day's work. They have a couple of drinks. They get a relaxing, comfortable feeling. Doesn't happen to me. They have dinner, and they don't drink anymore. That's the average temperate drinker, right? I don't feel that way when I drink, I'll tell you that. They have a couple of drinks. They get a slightly tipsy, dizzy, out of control feeling. They don't like that feeling, right? They don't like the feeling and they stop drinking. And we've all been out with people that are non-alcoholic, right? When we want to get drunk, try to get them to drink more. Say, come on, have another shot, have another beer. They, no, I feel this already. I don't want any more. And it's like, no, come on, just one more shot. And they're like, no, I'm feeling sick. I'm feeling nauseous. So 2 or 3 is all that they want. For them, it's a downer. It's a sedative, no more. Right? They get enough. They get enough alcohol every time they drink. Now, for me, it's the opposite. It's an upper. I can work a 12-hour day. I can get home. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I could probably just go to bed, but I'll have a couple of drinks and I wake up. It does the exact opposite. A couple of drinks, I wake up and I wanna start doing stuff, right? They get a tipsy, out of control feeling and they want to go to bed. I get an exciting, in control feeling. I wake up and I want to go out to the bar, right? They got a couple of drinks, they want to go to bed. I have a couple of drinks, I want to go to the bar and meet girls and dance and do stuff like that. We react differently physically and mentally, right? And again, we've all been out with those people and tried to get them to drink more and they just won't do it. Alcohol is a toxic substance. It's toxic, right? So the average drinker reacts normally in their body. If they drink a lot of it, they want to puke it out, right? My body demands more. So I'm in the 10%, so that's an abnormal reaction. Now, you cannot see it. You can only feel it if you're an alcoholic, right? That's that craving that we feel for more. My sister, right? I'm over at the house and we're having dinner and she gets out this nice bottle of wine and the big ceremony and gets the cork out of it and rinses it around and puts it in the glass and she smells it, right? And then she sets the glass of wine down and we start talking. I'm like, drink it, right? But that's what the normal person does. They do not react the same. So we're in the minority, and that's what the allergy means, right? I was up in the Boundary Waters the other day, and we went in. We came out actually, and we were having about 11 o'clock. We stopped into this restaurant. And the fellow walked up, and he was obviously hungover or still drunk, and he said, "Hey, do you want to start with a shot of tequila?" And I'm like, "You bet I do. I'd love a shot of tequila, but I can't. I got to be back to work in a week, right?" And what that means, if I take that shot of tequila, I am going to start drinking, I can't control it, and then the obsession takes over, and I probably won't make it back to work in a week, right? So I think he was one of us, but he didn't understand what I said. So again, today we know the doctor's opinion is true. Nine people drink safely, they're at ease with alcohol, they've got the enzymes, right? Again, when we drink, let's find my notes here. We're at dis-ease. So when it turns into the acetone, again, I got the acetone from drink number 1 in my body, creates that craving. I take drink 2. Now I got double the acetone. Drink 3, the acetone is building up. And my body simply cannot process it, right? And it's proven today, again, that when acetone is in the body, it causes physical craving for more of the same. Non-alcoholics metabolize acetone so fast that this craving never occurs, but in our body, the acetone is staying longer and causes this craving, demanding another drink, right? So once I keep drinking, right, I'm craving alcohol more after 30 drinks than I am after 2 or 3, right? So it's midnight. I'm lying on the floor of the bathroom in the bar. I just got the hell beat out of me, right? I've had 30 drinks. People run up. I'm bleeding all over the place. They run up to me. "Can we help you, sir? Can we help you?" I'm like, "Yes, get me another drink," right? I want more booze. And that explains why I never got enough. I got more than I needed. I got more than I could handle, but I never got enough alcohol. The non-alcoholics always get enough with 1, 2, or 3 drinks. All right, so let's go back to the book. Okay, so we just wrote step 1, powerless, because guys, that's and you know what? If we just had the allergy, right? If that's all that was wrong with us, we could pass the hat. Everybody could throw a buck in there. We'd never have to meet again. Because all we do is say, "Hey, we got the allergy. Let's just not take another drink." right? But that's only half our problem. The other half of our problem is we have an obsession of the mind, right? So that is an obsession that from time to time will overcome all ideas to the contrary and tell us that it's okay to take that first drink, right? And we're going to look at the obsession a little bit later.
Could you tell me what page you're on?
We're on page XXVIII, so Roman numeral 28, and we are on the about the middle of the page where it says frothy, XXVII. Jim, you want to?
The doctor's opinion.
Yep, so then show her right where the frothy emotional appeal is, right? And you can just listen because I got something for you too. So let's highlight frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. Let's highlight that. Frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. The message which can interest and hold these alcoholic people must, circle must, have depth and weight, and then highlight to the end of the paragraph. In nearly all cases, their ideals must, circle must, be grounded in a power greater than themselves if they are to recreate their lives. So next to that, what we just highlighted, write step 2. Step 2. And, you know, frothy emotional appeals seldom suffices. Oh, you've got to stop for the children. Look at these suffering children. How can you do that to them? We don't have enough money for the food. Your poor mother, she came over and saw you the other day. Can you stop? You're hurting your parents. You're hurting your children. You're hurting me. You just got fired. This can't go on. Please, you've got to stop. That's what frothy emotional appeal is. And unfortunately, that seldom works. It's telling us right there, right? So it's telling us that we need step 2. We've got to find a power greater than ourselves if we want to live long and happily in this world. If any feel that as psychiatrists directing a hospital for alcoholics we appear somewhat sentimental, let them stand with us a while on the firing line. See the tragedies, the despairing wives, the little children. Let the solving of these problems become a part of their daily work, and even of their sleeping moments. And the most cynical will not wonder that we have accepted and encouraged this movement. We feel, after many years of experience, that we have found nothing which has contributed more to the rehabilitation of these men than the altruistic movement now growing up among them. So all of a sudden, for the first time ever, these doctors who have been treating alcoholics are starting to see large numbers of recovery, and they're simply amazed by it. So we're gonna highlight the next 4 lines. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. Right? I mean, I read that and I said, duh. Right? The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. You know, again, I mean, I thought, you know, everybody drinks like me, right? You know, from my earliest times, going out to the bars, we would get drunk before we went out. When I was a high school student or a college student, we'd get good and drunk before we went out, you know, so we didn't have to spend that much money at the bars or the parties, right? And I thought everybody did that. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know that everybody, from when I was age 15 on, or maybe even 14, everybody, all my friends, and every girlfriend I ever had, they all said, John, you drink too much. John, there's something wrong with you. John, why can't you stop drinking? John, you stop drinking or this is over, right? From my earliest time, that's what people told me. And funny enough, guys, some of us can drink safely for years. Some people can drink safely for years, right? But you know, what's the difference? You know, once you come into these rooms, you still have the same problem that I had. Now me, I can remember the first time I ever had a beer. I think I was 13 or 14. I grabbed a Kegelbrau out at Big Fish Lake from my parents' case, and the allergy kicked in, and I went back to that case again and again and again, and I threw up and blacked out. So for me, the allergy presented itself the very first time I drank. Other people, it doesn't, but we drink ourselves into it, and it doesn't matter. Once we come here, we're all in the same boat. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. Underline, just they are restless, irritable, and discontented. Just underline that little phrase. They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience a sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks. So next to restless, irritable, and discontented, right? Dry drunk, this is what they had me write. Dry drunk, still an asshole, right? I mean, I got to tell you guys, I would quit drinking, and it didn't matter how many meetings I went to. I would quit drinking, and I was restless, irritable, and discontented, and I was mean, and I was ornery. And you better get the hell out of my way. I mean, I think I was much worse when I was not drinking, right? And, I still did those things that, when I was drinking, my toolkit was, to lie, cheat, steal, manipulate, con, and do all that stuff. And I was worse when I tried to quit drinking, right? Before I worked these steps, that is, right? So I was mean, I was restless, I was irritable, and I was so doggone uncomfortable. That feeling in my chest, that nervousness, that agitation, that anxiety, that anger, that fear, and it was horrible. And I knew that if I could just start drinking again, all that would go away. It'd all go away, and I'd feel good again, right? Now, some alcoholics, right, and maybe there's some in this room, they say, I'm not an alcoholic, I like the taste. I just like the taste of beer, right? I'm not an alcoholic. And you know what? From the first time I drank beer and even whiskey, I love the taste too, right? I also love the taste of Coca-Cola. And I have never sat down and drinking a case and a half of Coca-Cola, right? Because that beer does something for me that Coca-Cola does not do, right? So don't let them fool you. I just like the taste, right? Unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks. Drinks which they see others taking with impunity, right? I mean, I'm trying to quit and I see somebody else just having a few beers and they're fine. Well, damn it, he can do it, why can't? And that's from my earliest times, even in high school and college. When I had to stop for sports or I had to stop for studying or tests, and they can do it, why can't I? And man, sure enough, I'd start up again and I was in trouble. After they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, let's highlight to the end of the paragraph. And by the way, that word craving, that in the context of the big book, the word craving refers to once we put alcohol into our body. Right? If somebody that says, I've been sober for a couple years now and I really crave a drink, in the context of the big book, that's wrong. We might want a drink, we might need a drink, we might hope to get a drink, but the book tells us we can only crave alcohol once we put it into our body. And that's the allergy. And the phenomenon of craving develops. They pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over. I'm going to add a couple. And over and over and over. And unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, circle psychic change, in addition to highlighting it, there is very little hope of his recovery. So, under psychic change, let's write, it seems obvious, but write change in my thinking / spiritual awakening. Change in my thinking / spiritual awakening. And and some other words that they use to describe us, and you don't need to write these because we'll look at them in a couple of weeks. There's personality transformation, spiritual experience is changed around with spiritual awakening. We'll talk about that a little bit later too. But these are all words for the same thing, right? It's a complete turnaround in the way ideas, attitudes, and emotions on how we view life. And we're going to find out that this happens to us when we do the actions in the book. So, again, it's going to happen over and over and over and over. On the other hand, and strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once a psychic change has occurred, underline just the very same person who seemed doomed, just underline that little phrase, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol. Underlined at the end of the paragraph, the only effort necessary being that required, and circle required, that's a must, to follow a few simple rules. And after a few simple rules, write 12 steps. 12 steps. So basically, they're telling us that the same guy that had no control, right, and did the same thing over and over and over again, once he does a couple of simple things, they're going to change. Men have cried out to me in sincere and despairing appeal. Doctor, I cannot go on like this. I have everything to live for. I must, circle those musts. I must stop, but I cannot. You must help me. Faced with this problem, highlight 2 lines. If a doctor is honest with himself, he must, again circle must, sometimes feel his own inadequacy. So next to that little phrase we highlighted, we're going to write, doctors can't help. Right? Doctors can't help. We need more. They might be able to tell us to go to AA. They might be able to get us into detox, right? But the doctors, man, the Dr. Silkworth, he's saying, hey, you know what? Everything I did could not help these hopeless cases. Although he gives all that is in him, it is often not enough. One feels, underline to psychic change, one feels that something more than human power is needed to produce the essential psychic change. Underline that phrase, and off to the left, write higher power. Higher power. So we're going to need something more than just what they can do for us in detox. Though the aggregate means total, though the aggregate of recoveries resulting from psychiatric effort is considerable, we physicians must admit we have made little impression upon the problem as a whole. Many types do not respond to the ordinary psychological approach. I do not hold with those who believe that alcoholism is entirely a problem of mental control. Circle mental control, and then draw a little arrow off to the side and write willpower. Willpower. Right? And I always thought what the hell is wrong with me? I didn't go to a single class, at St. John's all semester, but I crammed for that exam. I aced it, and I got an A in that class. I can do anything. I can go out and get a job. I can get hired by I can do all these things. I didn't even practice, and I went out and ran a half marathon. I can do all these things. Why can't I stop drinking? What the hell's wrong with me, right? I can't pull myself together. And I couldn't figure it out. Highlight to the end of the page. I have had many men who had, for example, worked a period of months on some problem or business deal, which was to be settled on a certain date favorable to them. They took a drink a day or so prior to the date, and then the phenomenon of craving at once became paramount to all other interests. So the important appointment was not met. Stop highlighting with what was not meant. And we're going to see. I'm going to tell you a story about Bill when we read his story next week, where exactly that happened. But for me, I showed up. I just got this job. I was a good salesman. We had a sales meeting at 8 in the morning every Saturday, and I showed up drunk. And I did it on a regular basis. And finally, my boss said, "If you show up one more time drunk to this meeting, you're fired. You're fired, right?" And so I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't want to get fired. So I went, I didn't drink Sunday, I didn't drink Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, didn't drink Thursday. Friday night after work, I was so tightly wound that I said, I'm just going to have a couple of drinks. And I took a couple of drinks, and guess what? I showed up the very next Saturday drunk. And luckily, I got fired. They hired me back, but I could not do it. And I've also gotten a new job, right? You start in 4 days, John. Man, I'm not going to blow this one. I don't drink on day 1, day 2. On day 3, I'm starting the next day. I take a couple of drinks. The allergy kicks in, and I don't show up for the first day of my new job. It's insane what we do to ourselves. There are many situations which arise out of the phenomenon of craving, which cause men to make the supreme sacrifice, highlight supreme sacrifice. And in this context, you can write suicide, right? In the good context, that's when a soldier lays down his life, right? But in this context, it's suicide, to make the supreme sacrifice rather than to continue the fight. So we're gonna write down 5 types of drinkers right now, right? So these are 5 types of drinker that the doctor saw, Dr. Silkworth. The classification of alcoholics seems most difficult, and in much detail is outside the scope of this book. There are, of course, the psychopaths. Circle psychopaths, and off to the left write type 1. And type 1 is psychopath, right? I've got some names for some of the other ones, who are emotionally unstable. We are all familiar with this type. They are always going on the wagon for keeps. They are over-remorseful and make many resolutions, but never a decision. Underline, but never a decision, and write step 3. Write step 3. So that's type 1. Oh, I'm so sorry at what I did. I can't believe it. I'll never ever do it again. I promise you I'll never do it. They tell people that over and over again. That's type 1. So put a little line under make many resolutions, and underneath it write type 2. And you might as well write denial. That's type 2. And I'm going to read it now. There is the type of man who is unwilling to admit that he cannot take a drink. He plans various ways of drinking. He changes his brand or his environment. Put a slash after environment, right? So again, that's type 2, and we're going to call it denial. There is the type who always believes that after being entirely free from alcohol for a period of time, he can take a drink without danger. Put a slash after danger, and we're going to write type 3, allergy has gone, question mark. Allergy has gone, question mark. That was me, man. I haven't had a drink for 30 days. I've been making much too hard work of this thing. You know what? There was obviously something wrong, but I'm better now, right? And then I would take that drink, but you know what? The allergy kicked in and it kicked my ass, right? So the allergy wasn't gone, but we think it is. So you put a slash after danger. There is the manic depressive type, who is perhaps the least understood by his friends and about whom a whole chapter could be written. So that's 4, and we're going to write bipolar, up and down and all around, right? And that now the next one, I always thought I was a type 5, right? So next to type 5, I put me. Then there are the types entirely normal in every respect except in the effect alcohol has upon them. They are often able, intelligent, friendly people, right? That's type 5. So if you think that's you, you can write me. So we're going to highlight the entire next paragraph because it's so important, right? So just highlight that next. All these and many others have one symptom in common. They cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. This phenomenon, as we have suggested, may be the manifestation of an allergy which differentiates these people and sets them apart as a distinct entity. It has never been, by any treatment with which we are familiar, permanently eradicated. The only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence. And let's circle entire abstinence too, right? So I think what they're saying there, guys, here's what they're saying. If everybody, God forbid, but if everybody in this room took a couple of drinks, right, what they're telling us is that we would all react differently. So if we all took a couple of drinks, somebody would be over in the corner, they'd be going, oh, boo-hoo, the world doesn't treat me right, boo-hoo, right? That's one person. Another person is going to be up on the table dancing, laughing, singing, dancing, having a great time, right? 2 other people are going to be in the corner fighting each other, right? Getting into a fist fight. Then 2 other people are going to be in the other corner making passes at each other, right? But what they're saying, we're going to react differently, but one thing that we are all going to do, once we've taken 1 or 2 drinks, all of us are going to look for that 3rd, that 4th, that 5th drink. That's all they're saying right there. And that's because of the allergy. And again, if that was all we had, guys, we could pass the hat and go home. But we've got something on the other side of our head that from time to time tricks us into taking that first drink so that the allergy can kick in. So at the bottom of the page we can write, the great craving. The great craving. We are different. We are different. We start, we can't stop. The great craving, we are different. We start, we can't stop. And again, for some of us, it's Russian roulette. Some of us might be able now, they go out, maybe we can take 3 drinks and stop, but then the next night, maybe not. We just don't know. So we have the great craving. We are different. Once we start, we cannot stop. This immediately precipitates us into a seething cauldron, right? The boiling pot of debate. Much has been written pro and con, but among physicians, highlight to the end of the page, the general opinion seems to be that most chronic alcoholics are doomed. We're doomed. Right? So Dr. Silkworth has seen most of us, we're either going to end up locked in a mental ward or jail, or we're going to die. Right? That's it, most of us. And you know what, guys? It said, we read last week about the 75% that recovered when they did the program the old way. Today, most alcoholics don't make it into these rooms. Right? So most of us are screwed right off the bat. And you know what? The large percentage of us that do make it into these rooms, we think that we can get it by just going to meetings. And the large percentage of people that go to AA meetings are doomed as well. Right? It's the lucky ones. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't people here and there that can stay sober by going to meetings, right? Maybe there's a few here and there, but the large majority of real alcoholics, if we don't work the steps, we're screwed. That's what it's telling us. What is the solution? I can best answer this by relating one of my experiences. About 1 year prior to this experience, a man was brought in to be treated for chronic alcoholism. And all chronic means is we do the same thing over and over and over. That's all it means. And if we keep doing it over and over and over, we're going to die. Chronic alcoholism. He had but partially recovered from a gastric hemorrhage and seemed to be a case of pathological mental deterioration. He had lost everything worthwhile in life and was only living, one might say, to drink. Highlight the next sentence. He frankly admitted and believed that for him there was no hope. Highlight that, and next to it write step 1. Step 1. So, by the way, guys, back in the day, what they did with somebody like that, a lot of us got wet brains, right? And so this guy, gastric hemorrhage, you know what? They strap on a diaper and they throw us into cuckoo hatches, right? That's what they did to us back in the day. They locked us up, and a lot of us went so far they had wet brain and they did not recover. And Dr. Silkworth sees this guy and he's like, this guy cannot control his bodily functions, and he's also got wet brain. That's what Dr. Silkworth sees in this guy, right? Following the elimination of alcohol, there was found to be no permanent brain injury. Highlight the next little line. He accepted the plan outlined in this book. So highlight that, and next to it write step 2, solution. Step 2, solution. One year later, he called to see me, and I experienced a very strange sensation. I knew the man by name and partly recognized his features. By the way, when I quit drinking, one of the other benefits, not only did I get my life back, but I got my face back. You should have seen my face when I was drinking that much. It was all, you couldn't even, that's why he couldn't recognize him. Partly recognized his features, but there all semblance ended. From a trembling, despairing, nervous wreck had emerged a man brimming over with self-reliance and contentment. I talked with him for some time, but was not able to bring myself to feel that I had known him before. To me, he was a stranger, and so he left me. A long time has passed with no return to alcohol. Do the little brackets on that whole paragraph and write explanation of psychic change. That's an explanation of a psychic change. And again, we know that the psychic change is the same as the awakening, the experience, the personality transformation. Explanation of a psychic change. The doc didn't recognize him. When I need a mental uplift, I often think of another case brought in by a physician prominent in New York. Highlight the next 3 lines. The patient had made his own diagnosis and, deciding his situation hopeless, had hidden in a deserted bar and determined to die. Let's write step 1 on the left. Another step 1. On the right, we're going to write Fitz-Mayo, F-I-T-Z-M-A-Y-O. Underneath that, write Our Southern Friend, page 208. And then also write page 55. They talk about Fitz-Mayo twice. Fitz-Mayo, Our Southern Friend, page 208 and page 55. So he diagnosed himself. He knew there was no hope for him. He was rescued by his searching party and in desperate condition brought to me. Following his physical rehabilitation, he had a talk with me in which he frankly stated he thought the treatment a waste of effort unless I could assure him, which no one ever had, that in the future he would have the willpower, underlying willpower, to resist the impulse to drink. His alcoholic problem was so complex and his depression so great that we felt his only hope would be through what we then called moral psychology. So again, better values, ethics, right, combined with psychology and whatnot. And we doubted if even that would have any effect, right? So now, again, he went to the bar to die because he said, I'm not going to put my family through this anymore. I'm not going to put myself through this anymore. I'm not going to get their hopes up. I know that there's no hope for me. I've been detoxed time after time after time, and the same thing always happens. And I create havoc and heartache among my family. So he just went to die. Underline the next line. However, he did become sold on the ideas contained in this book. Okay, underline that. Circle the word sold, and next to it write work the steps. He has not had a drink for a great many years. I see him now and then, and he is a fine specimen of manhood as one could wish to meet. And then highlight to the end of the paragraph, or the page. I earnestly advise every alcoholic to read this book through and through. Perhaps he came to scoff, he may remain to pray. We've still got a little bit to do. Let's write, are you willing to read this book all the way through? Question mark. You are going to ask this to yourselves, but when you're at this point, when you're helping somebody, that's what you're going to ask your sponsee. When you're done with this, you're going to say, are you willing to read this book all the way through with me? That's what you're going to ask your sponsee. And hopefully they're going to say yes, because if they say yes, then they're on the road to recovery. If you say yes, you're on the road to recovery. So we're going to go back to this disease concept of alcoholism. Because remember, guys, the allergy is only part 1. So we're back to the disease concept of alcoholism. Now, I drank for a long time, and by my 5th treatment or so, I got out and I knew I had a problem. So the first thing I tried to do at some point is I tried to control my drinking while drinking. I would go to the liquor store and I would buy a half pint at 10 to 10, and I would go home and drink it, thinking that, I can't get drunk on a half pint. Well, the allergy would kick in, and I would walk 4 miles or drive my bike 4 miles if on my license to get to a bar to drink, right? So that didn't work, controlling drinking while drinking. I took Antabuse. Antabuse, I'd take it in the morning, and then if I drank that night, I would get deathly ill. I found that and of course by 5 o'clock, I'd say, why did I take that Antabuse? And I would start drinking anyway, and I found that if I did a lot of cocaine, I could drink straight through the Antabuse, and I would stop being sick after 2 or 3 hours. So none of these worked for me. I tried this for 3 or 4 hours, finally realized that I simply can't drink anymore, right? So we're back to the disease chart, right? When we wake up in jail, right, and we come out of a bad one, we say, I'm never going to take another drink as long as I live, right? So we're at the bottom of the page. Emerging from a well-known spree, we emerge filled with guilt, shame, remorse, resentment, everything that happened to us. I'm never going to drink again as long as I live. We say this, we mean it, we believe it. I told my mom over and over, Mom, this is it, and I believed it. And we assume we can do it. Days are going to pass, right? Look at the emotional barometer. We're at the bottom when we come out of a spree. But the little things in life are going to get to us. A nagging wife. a complaining husband, screaming kids, mean boss, flat tire, broken shoelaces, I didn't get that raise at work, burnt bacon, my folks are aging in the nursing home and I've got to spend all this time taking care of them. Our emotions start to build, they build. We remember the ease and comfort that come by taking a couple of drinks, no more than a couple, right? But we say, no, I'm not drinking, I quit. More days pass. All of a sudden I got 90 days and I say, hell, I'm not even an alcoholic. I got 90 days. I want to drink. No, I'm not drinking. My emotions continue to build up. They build up. And then all of a sudden 2 days later I think, hell, anything that's gone through everything I have, I deserve a drink. No, I'm not going to drink. The emotions build up more and more. And all of a sudden I start to think, what can alcohol do for me? And I forget what it's done to, or what can alcohol do for us? We forget what it has done to us. And we see nothing wrong with taking a drink. When we see nothing wrong with taking a drink, willpower doesn't work. We forget the jailhouse, the car wreck, the divorce court, the hospitals, the job loss, the bankruptcies. We only see that alcohol will give us some ease and comfort, and we see nothing wrong with taking the drink. Willpower stops working. We take the drink, we trigger the allergy, we go through the well-known stages of a spree, we come out at the bottom again, right? We're remorseful, we have another firm resolution never to do this again, and all of a sudden our emotions start to build up, and we do this over and over and over, and that's the obsession. Now guys, we cannot do anything about the body. We can't. We must attack this problem in our head. That's the only chance we got. So we've got to find a way to be sober without being restless, irritable, and discontent. We've got to find a way to live and not be filled with guilt, shame, and remorse, right? And resentment and fear. Just maybe if I could find a way to live where I have peace of mind, serenity, and happiness, if I can find a way to live sober where I can have that sense of ease and comfort without taking a couple of drinks, right? Find a way to live where I don't need to take a couple of drinks to feel better. That's called recovery. So we use the program of AA to find peace of mind, serenity, and happiness with no drink or drug necessary. That's what the steps do for us. Fellowships and meeting alone will not bring this about, right? The program of action in this book will. So I work through the steps, I live by the steps, I practice the steps every day, and we're going to learn how to do this in Code Blue. We are going to expel the obsession to drink and use, and we're going to learn how to become happily and usefully whole. That is recovery. You know, again, meetings and fellowship alone won't do it, but the steps will. They did it the first time I did them. They did it for me. So, we're out of time, so let's say the third step prayer and we'll get out of here. If you're able to get on a knee, if you can't, that's okay. Third step prayer is on page 60, I'm sorry, where are we? 63, yep. 63. God, I offer myself to Thee, to build with me and to do with me as Thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of Thy power, Thy love, and Thy way of life. May I do Thy will always. Peace. Thanks, everyone.